Yo, what up, Street Talks, the Air Came. All right, the Turbo Thought. This Turbo Thought is about what gets better over time and what gets worse over time. So this is such an interesting notion to me because it is an easy way that we could predict the future. It's easy to predict trends. It's hard to predict individual happenings. And of course, it's impossible to predict black swan events, which are essentially things that come out of the blue, right? So anyways, when it comes to investing or monetary issues, a good way to think about it is think about what will increase in value over time and what will decrease in value over time. Now, with almost everything in terms of our possessions and stuff, the value of things can only get worse, right? So imagine, can you imagine giving your iPhone Pro to your future grandkid? Imagine what's going to be worth, right? Or even similarly with cars, unless you own some sort of classic 1969 Mustang or some classic Porsche 911, typically the value of cars will only get worse over time. And certain cars like Tesla cars seem to hold their value relatively well over time. But eventually, if you have a 30-year-old Tesla with over 400,000 miles, expect to get less money for it than more. Same things happens with the shoes and stuff like that. Unless I guess you're in the sneaker game where you get some sort of uber rare Yeezys or Jordans, that could actually probably fetch more money down the line. But anyways, and actually, contrary to popular belief, I think the value of homes will actually continue to rise over time because now that we've been hit with the world's first global pandemic, COVID-19, just wait until COVID-21 or COVID-22 or COVID-30 comes along where travel will become increasingly difficult and more people and families will continue to stay in one spot. So even this is a trend in Southern California where you just buy a lot of land and you just build an additional back unit, like a mini house in the backyard, like a mother-in-law concept, and you'll probably get more and more generations of families living in the same old house like they did back in the old days, and where people will just pull their money together. But anyways, so if you're living somewhere you like and you own your home, maybe hold on to it, or get into real estate. Anyways, and the tricky thing is anything hardware related that we buy tends to get worse over time. At best, it could be robust. Like, for example, I currently I bought a refurbished iPhone 11 Pro. I can imagine that the materials, like stainless steel or whatever, will probably not disintegrate over time, yet the more I use it, it doesn't get better. It only eventually picks up scratches, wear and tear and stuff like that. Whereas compare that to a black paint film like MP camera, where the more you use it, the more brassing comes, the patina, the gold that shows underneath. And even one funny thought I had is imagine if Apple made an iPhone Pro brass edition where the cameras or the phone is made out of solid brass and it's covered with black paint. And then the more you use the phone, the more the beautiful golden patina shows underneath. And so it actually becomes cool to have a really old iPhone. Just kind of like any Leica user knows that the more you, if you have a super old school Leica, film camera or even an M9 with lots of patina, it's cool. Whereas, remember that Lenny Kravitz Leica that came out that was pre-brass? It was like the definition of uncool, because if you want to buy, something that's already pre-used, like, buying sneakers or buying shoes or buying jeans with holes pre in it, it's not cool. It's only cool if you wore and you made the holes yourself. Anyways, other things that become more important over time is obviously your health. And I think it's actually a very important industry to be in because now with COVID, more people working from home, Amazon's getting so cheap, Walmart, all these snacks and stuff like that, sugar. The strong trend is over time, people will only continue to accumulate more and more adipose tissue. America, I'm sure 50 years from now, probably like 80% of the population will be considered obese, and to be super fit and muscular and buff will only be reserved for the extremely elite, people who could have the knowledge to know that sugar and high fructose corn syrup is bad for you and so forth. But anyways, and focusing on your health is very important in the long term, because it's a way for you to mitigate senescence, which is the biologic term for aging, right? So in theory, right, like even for me, I am in, like, even seeing my face, I have a lot more wrinkles and wear and tear in my face than I did in my 20s. Yet the irony is I'm actually a lot stronger and buffer now than I was in my 20s. Like, I remember when I was in my 20s in college, I could barely deadlift 135 pounds. Now, a few months ago, I was able to do 1 rep max of a sumo deadlift for 475 pounds. No straps, no belt, just good old mixed grip and some chalk. And I continue on planning on improving the strength of my body, because your health actually becomes much more important, right? And so even things I used to do back in the day, like degenerate, drinking until I throw up, right? I don't drink alcohol no more, because I'm just not that good at tolerating and stuff like that. And now just sleeping early is probably the most important thing to me. And actually, as time goes on, money becomes less important to me, and maybe entertainment becomes less important to me. The number one important thing in my life is my physical health, my physiological well-being, getting a good night's sleep, especially now that I got a baby. So now, even after I take a shower and have dinner, let's say it's like 8:30, the first thing I do is jump into bed, cover my eyes, and even if I'm not tired, I lie there as long as I can, because I know if I expose myself to any sort of screens or virtuous reading or whatever, it's gonna cause me to stay up. And actually, over time, I'm actually slowly reducing my caffeine consumption. I'm trying to limit my caffeine consumption only in the beginning of the day. I'm being very strict on myself, not having coffee after the morning time. Certainly not after lunch or lunchtime. I don't eat lunch. I only eat dinner. And so being more rigid with intermittent fasting and weightlifting and so forth. And I also think that over time, career, blah, 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 becomes less important. What's more important is, creativity, artistic thriving, getting more interesting ideas, finding more inspiration, and finding more curiosity. So I think the hard thing is, for a lot of us, the older we become, the less curious we become. And actually, the goal should perhaps be, as time goes on, you become more curious and more interested in the world. And I still haven't obviously figured out the answer, but having a kid is certainly good to see the world afresh and to see the world with like clean, naive, pure eyes. So visual detoxes tend to be a good, interesting idea. And also just asking the question why, and not just focusing on hard knowledge or reciting things from Wikipedia, but just trying to challenge things yourself. Also hanging out with more kids, like I hang out with my niece Amelia and Benji. One's not in school yet and the other is a first grader. And so talking with them, interacting with them is actually much more interesting than adults, because adults tend to be set in their ways. So anyway, just my practical thought is, I'm an optimist. I think that the future is going to be much brighter. Know that you're the one that yields the light. And just the practical tip is avoid investing in things that get worse over time, and invest more in things that improve over time, which is you.